Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video. Before the video starts, I need you to do two things to help this channel grow. One is subscribe down below, and the second is like this video and share it with anybody that you want to spread MMA news to, whether it's family, friends, anybody. I always appreciate your support. And now let's get to the video. Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 37. In this episode, I will be reviewing Bellator 293. I also will be reviewing PFL. Their first event of the 2023 season took place last weekend. And of course, this weekend is UFC 287. That is a big card. And we also have PFL 2 this weekend as well. Ring that bell. All right, getting into this episode, let's start out with Bellator 293, a pretty action-packed card. So let's get into the prelims and some fights that I want to highlight. We had a bantamweight bout, and we had Bryce Meredith getting the submission victory. We also had Randy Field getting her Bellator debut victory. And we had Vladimir Tokov knocking out Lance Gibson Jr. What a knockout that was. And we had Lucas Brennan getting another submission victory. We had Jeff Creighton getting the upset decision victory against Joey Davis in his return. We also had Sarah Collins getting a big win in her Bellator debut against Pam Sorensen. And we had Adam Piccolotti getting the submission victory against Mandel Nalo. And also on the prelims, we had Mike Hamill getting the TKO victory over Nick Brown. What a TKO victory that was. Hamill threw a beautiful head kick to start the sequence off that he finished Brown with. And we had Raheem Cleveland getting the submission victory over Christian Edwards. A little bit of controversy in that fight, but I clearly saw Christian Edwards tap to that submission, but he didn't seem like he thought he did. And now let's move on to this main card. Kicking it off, we had two high-ranked prospects in the light heavyweight division. We had Sullivan Cully versus Luke Traynor, and Luke Traynor gets the submission victory over Sullivan Cully. And after the fight, Luke Traynor proposed to his girlfriend, and she said yes. So in my opinion, that second victory is his most important victory. That would have been horrible if she said no, but congratulations to Luke Traynor and his now fiance. And that was, a great moment in the cage. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout. We had Archie Colgan taking on Justin Maltavo, and Archie Colgan gets another TKO finish. He is still impressing everybody with his striking, even though he is known as a wrestler. But Archie Colgan, another beautiful striking display, and Justin Maltavo, a very good striker in his own right. So impressive victory by Colgan there. Moving on, we had a middleweight bout. We had John Salter taking on Aaron Jeffrey, and John Salter gets the decision victory. Salter's grappling was just too much for Jeffrey. Salter really put a lot of his weight on Jeffrey, and it seemed to tire Jeffrey out. And after the fight, John Salter retires from MMA. He's been in this game a long time. He's been in the UFC, been in Bellator, fought for a belt in Bellator. So congratulations on a very successful career, John Salter, and to go out like that with a win, that is a great end to a career. Moving on to the co-main event of the evening, we had Kat Zingano taking on Leah McCourt, and what a fight this was between both women. It was a very fun grappling affair. Both women obviously are great grapplers, and they put on a show. They were reversing each other on the ground. Leah McCourt would have top control and look like she was in control of the fight. And then Kat Zingano, she is just so strong, she would end up somehow on top of Leah McCourt, and then she had dominant position. And, this fight was super close. I don't know why there was a 30-27 for Kat Zingano, but Kat Zingano gets the decision victory. It was a unanimous decision. I saw it kind of a split decision, but I do feel like that knee that busted Leah McCourt open was a big difference in the judges' eyes. That cut was really gnarly, and she started leaking immediately. But Kat Zingano, like I said, she gets the unanimous decision victory, and she should be the next opponent for Chris Cyborg whenever Cyborg comes back to Bellator. I believe she is still not even signed to a contract, so we'll see where this ends up. Who knows if those two will face, but I definitely think that Kat Zingano, her next fight, should be a title fight. Now, moving on to the main event of the evening, we had Marcelo Gome taking on Daniel James. And Marcelo Gome, for the first 2 rounds, fought a really good fight. He damaged Daniel James's leg. His lead leg was pretty damaged. But coming into the 3rd round, Daniel James put the pressure on Gome and ended up getting the knockout finish. He laid it all on the line to get this win, Daniel James, and he gets the TKO finish, just a flurry of heavy punches. Daniel James is one powerful dude, and he is 41 years old. I didn't even realize that he was that old, but he is still a dangerous heavyweight in this division. It was a very good Bellator card. Like I said, a lot of finishes. Now, let's get to PFL. Now, moving on to PFL, starting with this light heavyweight fight, we had Hendricks taking on Impa Consagne. I believe that's how you say his name. And Impa Consagne gets the decision victory over Corey Hendricks. And that was Consagne's PFL debut. Moving on, we had a featherweight bout. We had Chris Wade taking on Bubba Jenkins, and this is their 2nd time facing each other. Chris Wade won their first matchup, but the tables turned in this fight. Bubba Jenkins gets the decision victory, and I am pretty sure that these two will meet again at some point for their trilogy matchup. That fight should be fun. Moving on, we had a featherweight bout. We had the former featherweight PFL champion, Mavlid Kasaboyev. I believe I probably butchered that name. I apologize, but Kasaboyev gets the decision against Rajo Kudo, and the PFL champion from a couple of years back is back and winning again. He continues to be undefeated. He is now 20-0, so that is very, very impressive. Moving on, we had another light heavyweight bout. We had Krzysztof Joko taking on Will Fleury, and Will Fleury gets the decision victory. Moving on, we had a light heavyweight bout. We had the 2022 PFL light heavyweight world champion Robert Wilkins taking on the debuting Thiago Santos. And Wilkins gets the decision victory. Wilkins used his grappling and striking perfectly to counter Thiago Santos's powerful stand-up. So Wilkinson gets a big win in his career. Now, moving on to the main event, we had a featherweight bout. We had the 2022 PFL World Champion Brandon Loughnane taking on Marlon Moraes, and this fight went how I envisioned it exactly. Brandon Loughnane gets the TKO. He just chopped down Marlon Moraes' legs, and I got to give it to Marlon Moraes. He is tough as nails. He could have quit after, his legs started to fail him. Both of his legs were beat up by the second round. And, he tried to pressure Loughnane at the beginning of the round. He gave it all he had, but Loughnane just touched his legs a couple more times and he fell and could not get up and continue. So Brandon Loughnane gets the TKO finish. Huge win for him. Now, let's get to this weekend's action. UFC 287 is this Saturday. I am hyped for this card. Of course, the main event is Alex Pereira defending his middleweight championship against the former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. Obviously, these two have a long history together. I will get into that in a little bit, but let's get to the prelims and preview these fights. We have a women's strawweight bout. We got Jacqueline Amorim taking on Sam Hughes. We got a featherweight bout. We got Sha Yinlin taking on Steve Garcia. The next fight is a catchweight bout. We have Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Trey Ogden. And Bahamondes had an insane KO spinning kick. If you haven't seen it, which I don't know that you haven't, because that was one of the best knockouts of last year, go check out that knockout. This kid is very talented. Moving on, we got a women's strawweight bout. We got Cynthia Cavallo taking on Lupi Gonez. That should be a fun fight. Moving on, we have a heavyweight bout. We got Carl Williams replacing Chris Barnett on short notice. He is taking on Chase Sherman. So let's see how Carl Williams does on this short notice opportunity. Moving on, we got a middleweight bout. We got Gerald Meerschaert taking on Joe Pyfer. Be like Joe Pyfer. At least that's what Dana White said. Moving on, we got a women's strawweight bout. We got Michelle Waterson Gomez taking on Luna Pinheiro. And Luna Pinheiro, this is her UFC debut. So she's taking on the karate hottie. That is a tough task to ask, but she is 30. She's in her prime. So let's see how she does against Waterson Gomez. Moving on, we have a middleweight bout. We got Chris Curtis taking on Kelvin Gastelum. This is a great end to the prelims. This is a great fight. I cannot wait to see these two men scrap. Chris Curtis is always fun, and Kelvin Gastelum is always a game fighter. Moving on to the main card, we got a bantamweight matchup. We got Raul Rojas Jr. taking on Christian Rodriguez. Obviously, we all know Raul Rojas Jr. He's only 18 years old, and he is on the main card. So obviously, the UFC has a lot of hope for this young man. I hope he performs very well. We may have a future star in Rojas Jr. So let's see how he does against Christian Rodriguez. Moving on, we have a welterweight bout. We got Kevin Holland taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio, and this is a very fun matchup at welterweight. Santiago Ponzinibbio had a great comeback fight in his last fight against Alex Moreno. He was getting touched up by Alex Moreno through the 3 rounds, but in that 3rd round, he really took control and finished Alex Moreno. We got Kevin Holland coming off of a corner stoppage loss against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. That fight, I feel like he could have fought that fight differently. He could have implemented more grappling, and he probably would have won that fight. So let's hope Kevin Holland uses all of his tools, because he can beat Ponzinibbio if he uses all of his tools. Moving on, we have a banger of a bantamweight matchup. We got Rob Font taking on Adrian Yanez. I've been so high on Adrian Yanez ever since I saw him on Dana White's Contender Series. This guy is a force to be reckoned with. He is an amazing boxer. It's so slick, his boxing, and you just got to see some of his highlights. Go watch his last win. That was an impressive win over Tony Kelly. He butchered Tony Kelly, and with his boxing and with his movement and everything. But Rob Font in his own right is a very, very good boxer. So I'm excited to see how these guys come after each other. Moving on now to the co-main event of the evening. It is a welterweight bout. We have Gilbert Burns taking on Jorge Masvidal. This fight should be exciting. Yeah, there should be a lot of violence and blood. I mean, Gilbert Burns is just a beast. He takes any fight anywhere against anyone, and you got to respect that out of Gilbert Burns. I mean, this guy fought everybody that the UFC has told him to fight, and we got Jorge Masvidal coming off of 3 straight losses, so he really has to get back in the win column. Jorge Masvidal himself has said if he loses this fight, this is going to be his last fight. But if he wins, then he's going to continue to fight for that championship fight that he wants back. So there is a lot of stakes on the line. We got title shots. We have possible retirements. Gilbert Burns, he's got great stand-up, and his jiu-jitsu has always been good, but now his stand-up is just as good as his jiu-jitsu, so he can mix it up very well. Jorge Masvidal has the stand-up advantage in my opinion, but he hasn't looked great in his last couple fights, so let's see how this one goes. Very excited for that welterweight bout. Now, moving on to the main event of the evening, we have a middleweight title fight. We have the champion Alex Pereira taking on the former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. This is the 4th time that these guys are gonna fight in a combat sports setting. If you did not know, their first 2 meetings were in kickboxing matches. Alex Pereira won by decision in their first matchup, and Alex Pereira knocked out Izzy cold in their second kickboxing matchup. And then we fast forward to their last fight, and that was obviously in the UFC under MMA rules. And Israel Adesanya, in my opinion, he did a lot of great things against Alex Pereira in that fight, in their last fight. And he still got stopped in that 5th round. Israel Adesanya, he was doing everything. He was mixing up the mixed martial arts. He was grappling. He was clinching. He was doing all that. And he was able to take down Alex Pereira. So he's going to have to do that again. And he's going to have to stay away from those hooks, because Alex Pereira hooks will send you into another dimension. That's what started that whole sequence off that finished Israel Adesanya in that 5th round. Alex Pereira hit him with a brutal hook, and Izzy was in trouble, and he was against the fence. Not a great place to be against Alex Pereira, and he got finished against the fence. So he's going to have to move. He did a lot, like I said, he did a lot of great things in that fight, but it's just after a while, how long can you be perfect against Alex Pereira before he hits that one shot? Because he just needs that one shot. We cannot forget, though, Israel Adesanya hurt Alex Pereira very bad right as the first round horn sounded, Pereira was in a lot of trouble. So Israel Adesanya can hurt Alex Pereira, and I'm going to have to take Israel Adesanya to win this fight. I just think he is the more well-rounded mixed martial artist. I said this in their first fight, but, Alex Pereira's striking is world class. But I'm still going to take Israel Adesanya. I just think he is the more complete MMA fighter. But I would not be surprised if Alex Pereira finishes him again. I feel like sometimes there's just these certain people that you cannot really figure out. And Alex Pereira may be that person for Israel Adesanya. But Israel Adesanya, I feel he's fresh. He's re-motivated as if he wasn't already, and I feel like he really is gonna want this win back. So that's why I'm gonna take Israel Adesanya. It's not a super confident pick, but I do think that he is gonna pull this off. I think he's gonna win by decision because he was winning that first MMA fight until he got hit with that hook and that finishing sequence that Alex Pereira threw at him. None of his punches missed. So Alex Pereira is going to have to get on Izzy. He's going to have to back him up against the fence. Maybe mix in some takedowns because he did mix in takedowns in their first fight. Very excited to see this grudge match. Now let's move on to the other action in the weekend. PFL Week 2 is this Friday. Let's get into some of the more interesting fights. We got heavyweights and we have women's featherweights on the card. Let's start with this heavyweight matchup. We have Danielo Marquez taking on Yorgan De Castro. Yorgan De Castro, I feel bad for him. He's gone through like 2 opponents, but he is going to fight on this card. Luckily, this should be a slugfest like a lot of these heavyweight matchups should be. Moving on, we got another heavyweight matchup. We got Marcelo Nunez taking on Maurice Green. And looking forward in the card, we have another featherweight matchup. We got Ryan Ferreira, who is 6'8". That is insanely tall. He is taking on newcomer Razivan Kanif. I believe that's how you say his name. And moving on, we have a very interesting bout that is a showcase bout. It is an amateur lightweight bout. We got Ali Walsh. He fought last year. This is Muhammad Ali's grandson, one of his grandsons. His other grandson is a boxer, so very interested to see how Ali Walsh does. I did see his other amateur fight in PFL, and he knocked that guy out pretty good. Moving on, we got a women's featherweight bout. We have Olena Konakskiv from Ukraine taking on Aspen Ladd. Aspen Ladd won her PFL debut against, I believe it was Julia Budd. She won by decision. That was a showcase bout. So very interested to see how Aspen Ladd does in the featherweight division. Moving on, we got another heavyweight bout. We got Bruno Capelozzi. He's the 2021 PFL Heavyweight World Champion, and he is taking on Mathis Scheffel. That should be a fun fight. Bruno Capelozzi is a very fun heavyweight. A lot of power, a lot of speed for his size. And, of course, we have the main event. We got a woman's featherweight bout. We got Larissa Pacheco, who is last year's 155-pound women's champion, and she's taking on the former Bellator featherweight champion Julia Budd. This matchup should be a good matchup. Larissa Pacheco, she is a beast. I would not be surprised if she gets this done in one round. Before her last fight with Kayla Harrison, she had like a 5-fight win streak, all ending in the first round by KO. So, Julia Budd is good, but she is a little bit older now. So I'm excited to see what Bud can do to try to prevent a first-round stoppage. But Larissa Pacheco is a beast, and she's got so much power in her fist. Now she's at featherweight, so let's see how much of her power that she can retain in this fight. Very good PFL card. You don't want to miss that. And that is going to do it for this episode of the KO podcast. To follow the podcast in my Twitter and Instagram bio, I have a link tree with all of the links to the podcast. Please go and check that out. You'll see everything from the website to the Instagram, Twitter pages, YouTube, and all that good stuff. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen. Stay safe. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.